I am Dr. Bahadur Hassan, and I'm working as medical specialist and neurophysician at CMH Mali, Karachi since July 2020. Before that, I was posted at Skardu, uh, which is located at a height of 8,000 feet above sea level. Uh, there, I used to receive patients on daily basis from higher altitude, like 12,000 to 15,000 feet. And mostly those patients, the patients that I received were young males who were deployed there at high altitude. They were with thrombosis at different organs. I saw people with pulmonary thromboembolism. I saw people with mesenteric thrombosis, and CVST and stroke were also very much prevalent over there. Sorry. Since I received many patients with CVST, at high altitude, under the guidance of Sir Professor Dr. Wasi Shakir, I carried out a study as well on CVST, its demographics, and multiple factors that affect CVST at high altitude. Now, what does exactly meant by high altitude? Between 5,000 to 8,000 feet, we call it moderate altitude, and above 8,000 feet till 10,000 feet is high altitude. When we go beyond 10,000 feet till 17,000 feet, it's very high altitude, and above that is extremely high altitude. Pakistan has a unique landscape and unique geography. It has many peaks with heights of very high altitude, extremely high altitude as well. And many of our soldiers are deployed at heights even at 21,000 feet and above. Now, what happens? Why does a stroke occur, and why does thrombosis occur at high altitude? As the individuals ascend, the barometric pressure, it decreases, and there is hypobaric hypoxia that cause vasoconstriction and polycythemia. This hypoxia with secondary polycythemia, it causes development of thrombus. Furthermore, patients deployed at high altitude, they have to combat the harsh weather as well. When I was carrying out this study, I categorically asked them about water intake at heights, and they admitted that they did not drink enough water because they had to attend washroom frequently, and it was difficult for them. Then vomiting and diarrhea, that is also very common because of acute mountain sickness. It adds to dehydration. There is more mouth breathing, and mouth breathing increases insensible water loss that also increase dehydration. Now, all these factors, they combine and add to the hyperviscosity of blood and hypercoagulability of blood. Moreover, living at such unfavorable condition, it is also very stressful. And to combat that stress, people take shelter of smoking, and smoking also increases thrombosis. Now, who are the individuals who develop stroke at high altitudes? Because many people are deployed there, many individuals go there, but not everyone develops thrombosis. We can say that young smoker males with hypertension and diabetes who ascend fast and who does not follow standard protocols for acclimatization and who stays at height for longer duration, they are more prone to develop thrombosis. In our study, we observed that usually young males, they were more prone to develop thrombosis at high altitude. To find the exact incidence of stroke at heights, a study was conducted in northern Pakistan. They enrolled 4,000 individuals at high altitudes and 4,000 lowlanders. And the results showed that there was 10 times more incidence of a stroke at heights. Then CVST was also more prevalent at heights, and the single most important predictor and contributing factor was found to be dehydration. If we talk about international data, there is very limited data available on internet for incidence of a stroke at high altitudes. Only one review article, 8 case series, and 7 case reports were found that came from moderate to high altitude areas. Nothing from very high altitude and extremely high altitude. And results of all these literatures showed around 10 times increased incidence of strokes in young males between 25 and 45 years of age. Further studies from extremely high altitude and very high altitude should also be done to find the incidence. Now, this is a busy slide. It shows comparison in findings of different international studies that study demographic and clinical features of high altitude at strokes, of strokes at high altitude. This comparison shows that mostly strokes at high altitude occurs in young males. Similarly, incidence of ischemic stroke was much higher than hemorrhagic stroke. The important risk factors in descending order were smoking, hypertension, obesity, and alcoholism. And as already discussed, polycythemia is a major contributor in disease pathology. Now, in our study, we observed that most of the patients had involvement of left transverse sinus involvement, followed by superior serratus sinus thrombosis. This is in contrast to many international studies that are available on the internet. They showed involvement of superior serratus sinus more than other sinuses. Among stroke, MCA infarctions were found more than other arterial infarctions, and the reason of this distribution is not known. Among CVST and stroke, if you compare both, then CVST at high altitude is found more than stroke. The clinical features of both the diseases, CVST and stroke, at high altitude and at lowlands, they are almost similar, but there is delay in diagnosis of CVST and stroke at high altitude. And the reason being, there are overlapping features with haze and acute mountain sickness, because haze, high altitude cerebral edema, and acute mountain sickness, they also present with clouding of consciousness, seizures, headache, blurring of vision, sometimes focal neurologic deficit as well. And these are the same features that are found in stroke and CVST as well. In our study, we observed that headache was the most prevalent symptom in patients of CVST, followed by seizures and blurring of vision. In stroke, focal neurologic deficit was the most defining symptom. These are the hematological investigations that are carried out in any patient who comes with stroke or CVST. 90% of our patients in our study, they had secondary polycythemia, and only one patient was found to have protein C deficiency. All others had only secondary polycythemia. Other tests were normal. Now, the imaging findings in cases of CVST, they are very diverse. They can be complete, I don't know why it's not appearing. Okay, there's some problem in slides. Anyways, there can be complete normal CT scans and MRIs, or they can be cortical bleeds. They can be venous infarcts, or they can be massive bleed with herniation and mass effect. In our patients, 15 patients, we actually studied 28 patients because we received 28 patients in that period. Out of those, 15 patients had completely normal CT scans and MRIs, and they were diagnosed later on the basis of CTV and MRV. 7 patients had cortical bleed. Venous infarcts without cortical bleed were found in 6 patients. 19 patients, that makes around 67%, they had left transverse sinus thrombosis, and 39% patients had superior serratus sinus thrombosis. Most of the patients, they had multiple sinus involvement in our study. The mainstay of treatment in CVST at high altitude and lowlands both, it is anticoagulation in the form of low molecular weight heparin, unfractionated heparin, or oral drugs, for example, warfarin or novel oral anticoagulants. We treated 75% of our patients with low molecular weight heparin, followed by rivaroxaban, for 3 to 6 months. And only 6 patients were given warfarin. They were given warfarin because warfarin was already started from other hospital, and we did not change the treatment. We continued that, and we compared the results. And the results were comparable. There was no bleeding episode in our patients after treatment. Surgical treatment is also offered to patients who either don't respond to medical treatment or who deteriorates because of edema, herniation, or raised ICP. We performed hemicranotomy on only one patient who had herniation, and he could not survive. He expired later on. Now, in addition to medical treatment, endovascular treatment is a recent advancement in strokes in CVST. A study was conducted in China in 2018 and 19, and they compared the results of thrombolysis versus mechanical thrombectomy with thrombolysis. They enrolled 41 patients in thrombolysis group and 15 patients in mechanical thrombectomy with thrombolysis group. Mechanical thrombectomy in that study was performed using balloon thrombectomy and retrieval devices and aspiration devices. The results were comparable. These were the results. At discharge, 90% of patients had MRS of less than 2 in thrombolysis group and 80% in thrombectomy group. However, further studies should be done to find the exact effects of these treatments. Majority of our patients, they had good outcome at discharge. Different studies on CVST, they also report good outcome. We define good outcome as MRS of less than 2 at 3 months. When patients arrived, we did MRS at presentation, and then at discharge, then at 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. The average MRS at presentation in our patients was 5.5, but 80% of our patients had MRS of less than 2 at 3 months. Stroke has worse prognosis than CVST. This is largely because of milder clinical presentation onset in CVST. The poor prognostic factors in high altitude related CVST and strokes are age more than 37 years, male gender, presentation with intracerebral hemorrhage, coma, seizures, deep CVST, and concomitant coagulopathies. Now, as they say, prevention is always better than cure. Slow ascent and proper acclimatization according to standard protocols helps in prevention of the height-induced illnesses. The proper procedure of acclimatization is to climb high and sleep low. We ask individuals to climb, say, 300 meters during daytime, and before night, they have to fall back to 250 meters. They come back 50 meters down, they stay there overnight, and the next day, they again climb for 300 meters further. Then they come back at night, 50 meters down, they stay there, and the third day they again climb. So this is the proper way of acclimatization, which is recommended. Dehydration should also be prevented, and people should be encouraged to drink more water, and smoking should be discouraged at heights. Now, we can say that CVST and strokes at high altitude, they are not rare, but they are understudied in stroke research. Recent studies indicate a higher incidence of stroke in high altitude regions, particularly in younger age. Smoking and dehydration are found to be potentially reversible and preventable risk factors. Well-defined case-controlled studies are needed to determine risk factors for stroke at high altitude. And what we can do, we can design several multinational and multi-center registries. They can help shape evidence-based recommendations that can be followed at government level to prevent occurrence of these preventable illnesses. Thank you.
Just to note, myself and Dr. Wase were having a discussion about having stroke workshop in Swat in Malam Jabba. So just caution that it's 9,500 feet. I have a question for you, Dr. Waj. How do you compare the incidence of CVST in soldiers who are in desert area and those who are at high altitude? Thank you.
So the soldiers who are deployed at high altitude, they have, because we study them, and they have more incidence, almost 10% of those individuals who are deployed at high altitude, they come down, they dismount with some of the illness. It can be high altitude cerebral edema, it can be acute mountain sickness, or it can be CVST. Sometimes, very rarely, they are repatriated with stroke. In deserts, well, the risk factors are same as for other people. There is no disparity in that.
Okay, thank you.